Right. Thank you and everyone for joining the Internet of Value Foundation New York, episode 153. And for all of those who come and listen to this information in the future, I hope you guys find it as valuable as I know I do every single day. The diverse amount of mindsets and perspectives you guys that come into the space and uh, and girls, I should say, too. It's always a great conversation, so thank you guys ahead of time. And feel free if anyone wants to hit the request to come up. Shellfish, Dazzling, Nav, and 808. Welcome, guys. And I'm going to go grab some content to put up top real quick, and we can get into the conversation. Although me and Shellfish were just talking about this in another space lately as well. So, Shellfish, if you have further things you want to run off of, feel free to. All right, sorry about that. Shellfish, you there?
I am here.
Welcome up.
We're talking about Gen AI, PMS, and neural networks, and E8 tonight.
Nice.
You know, I love me some acronyms.
There's a reason I wrote it out.
I'm sorry, I tend to like being a thorn in your side sometimes. So I actually would love to continue on with the Gen AI talk and coding languages, but where did you want to start with your lesson today?
No, no, lesson, open conversation, just topics above my mind. We can completely change the subject if anybody else wants to, but yeah, I mean, it somehow correlates that I posted that space and then you guys were speaking about it in the space that I was in with you before. So I mean, it's up to you if you want to go ahead with the conversation. If not, I'll take it in some route my brain allows.
So where are you going with the platonic mind space? I'd be interested to actually see. Does it have more to do with like the spaces that we're in, or because platon like when I think platonic, I think of like a neutral friend network. So where are you headed with platonic mind space?
The platonic mind space, of course, if you think of platonic space, being a substrate network in which the relation to us as matter and the symmetrical interactions of electromagnetic frequencies on subatomic realms, which lead to, or we believe to, of course, as observers, which has led to us being the particular observers we are in the particular type of reality that we are in. Um, this platonic mind space is actually something I take from Michael Levine, where I and a lot of us in our conversations we speak about it similar in the way that we use our terms, right? The quantum space or the metaphysical space. I think Platonic space is very akin to just the description of the geometrical representations, or even if you are into things like sacred geometry, where there are these much larger in structures in which you could maybe more so depict as fields and use something that's like quantum field theory to kind of describe these particular complexity of interactions, which has led to the substrate and archetypes of our personas and the beliefs of us as observers in our reality. And so, yeah, the Platonic mind space is really a short term that simply describes that substrate in our reality. And I was going to go there more towards the end of the space, after speaking about, how we were having the conversation about like neural networks before, and just cognition in general from different levels and states of observational awareness, but yeah, I mean we triggered some people to come up, so it's cool. 808, you got your hand up though, so if you'd like to jump right in, please feel free, man.
Interesting because from Platonic mindset, I was going with mindset instead of mind space. Where it's rooted in the philosophy of Plato and the ideas that transcend the physical world. But what's interesting about it, from Platonic mindset to neural networks, artificial intelligence, comparison arises within neural network functions in the structures of interconnected nodes or neurons that process information, enabling them, the system, to learn patterns, make decisions, and predict outcomes based on input data. But the difference from Plato's ideal forms is understood the philosophy side of reasoning. Neural networks derives from the understanding of data through training and experience from the empirical world. But what's interesting is that, even in such instances, we are always learning, even ourselves, through everyday action that we do, which we teach ourselves all these different things that we always combine, or even um, so say that we come up against that's hard for us to learn. So we try to attack it in different ways to learn different ways to kind of get a better grasp at it. Which is, we can see within a lot of these Gen AI models and a lot of these different models we see being used today, on which we have years and years of study and data that can boost what we already have and what we have already done to further our innovation, which is always, uh, a big thing with and a big topic to talk about when you view the layers within a neural network as analogous to the journey of moving closer to the ideal form of the understanding and the process and progresses through the layers of the deep neural networks. So we've seen a lot of um, increasingly sophisticated layers of algorithms and consensuses coming together to bring up forth a more better recognizable generalized idea of representations of the data that we have concepts of, such as dog or cosmology or mathematics and so on and so forth, to natural phenomena. Good stuff. But yeah. Hello everybody. Hope everybody's doing good.
Aloha, brother. Glad you're here. Always a pleasure having you up, 808. And we have Ben up here too. Ben, interesting subject for you to come up and speak on. But if you have any thoughts, please feel free to jump in.
GM, of course. I know everything about this stuff. No, I don't know anything about it at all. It's very interesting, though. What is this self-funded tactical satellite? What is a tactical satellite? What are you talking about? Is it a weapon that Lockheed Martin did? What is this?
Yeah. So whether it need to be, this is of course more marketing from them, if anything, because you click on their first post and it brings you to the space enabled network. But this is more about enabling communication through interoperable satellites. So today we think of Starlink, of course, Starlink being a major networking asset to the entire world that's going on right now. They have over 4,000 satellites, almost 5,000 satellites that are in outer space at this moment. But this is just from Lockheed Martin's point, and just going to something that we were speaking about in the space earlier about microchips and transistor sets. Them being right along with this mission of creating this interoperable system in outer space for the United States. And of course, I post them because I'm just a personal fan of them. I I like what the company does and has done, and they are the largest private um, government contractor. So it's pretty cool.
Sure. Yeah, well, I thought it was related to the platonic mind space. Very interesting.
Well,
Very interesting stuff.
yes and no. So
Okay,
they,
explain.
they they do a lot of satellites in outer space that are not only doing communication, tactical operations and such, but testing, right? So a lot of research testing that goes on in outer space, and this, when we think about this platonic mind space, and where it takes me with, I don't usually like to research things deeply unless I think there's a potential useful aspect of it in relation to the bigger world, our macroscopic world that we exist in and have general relativity with, right? And so when I think of something like the Platonic mind space, this understanding of a geometrical representation in the way that atoms form themselves of interactions, and then molecular compounds that are of course built, and we have things like our elements and matter itself. And you take something like the capabilities of a generative AI tool, the knowledge that we have, as a constructive whole already as a species, where we know the enabling of certain um, logical sets in duplicities of mathematical equations can equate to very magnificent mathematical probabilistic understandings of our reality. With that being said, the further more production of advanced hardware and chips, the further the computational ability is able to have this energy source in which it can do more extreme computational computes really. um, I think it gives us the greatest standing, in which, of course, we are the closest our species has ever been in recorded history, to being able to not only understand this subatomic realm of space, which creates the matter in which our reality is, but possibly learn to interact with it, in which is a meaningful way in which we can see relations of some sort of relativity, right, in our macroscopic space. And so, yeah, the of course long-winded. I'm sorry about that, but that's why I think it does have something to do with each other.
Wow. I mean, listen, I'm a layman. You obviously know about this stuff. I would imagine the majority of us also listening might not have this expertise. This is a little scary. No? Aren't we worried that aren't you worried that as we are moving, the technology is progressing so quickly that we're going to eventually need to have a reliance on on general AI to create and to maintain and to build these new technologies, that we're going to start losing control of it ourselves? No, I mean, is this something where how are the scientists who are creating the general AI and creating these physical things like the satellites, for example, just as an example, of course. How are they working in tandem? What is the philosophy that goes on behind this stuff? Because I mean, this seems like it could very quickly spiral into a partnership with the general AI. Am I wrong to assume that it's going to progress to a point where they're a peer?
Well, let me first say this. Of course, this is my own personal opinion. I think AI is a horrific term in itself. I don't think anything that exists in our reality to be artificial. I think intelligence is really just a measure of your own aptitude, trying to have a cognition of relevance to whatever the other action may be that you perceive. So, I don't ever think that when you think about it from a peer perspective, well, the peer is us. I mean, the artificial intelligence in this particular instance, or these general AI models, whatever tool set we manufacture and manifest externally, is somewhat, in my personal opinion, a reflection of us. And so, you know, when of course there is always possibility of risk and things being used in malicious ways. I mean, this is, if you look from a historic standpoint, we really don't have the best, maybe highest probabilistic percentage that it won't be used in malicious ways. But when I look to the surrounding world, in which, in the relation of what we as a species have done to our planet, for instance, we are in a very you know against the wall in some sense of possibilities that we can do, or even take it further, right? Where simple things like a horrific earthquake, or uh, volcanic eruption, or an asteroid hitting the Earth, I mean, could evaporate our species pretty much instantaneously. And so, these things being, in my opinion, higher categorical risk, I think there's a larger risk in not pursuing the technology and trying to advance as fast as possible, of course. But yes, there should always be, rules of the road that make sense, stop gates. I mean, you do need things in order, and this is just from a societal set. If you even think about it from just the way that you have your, psychological persona, there are lots of different things that you have set for yourself as parameters and rule sets, and I don't think there's anything wrong um, having that in relation to the ability to have a balanced network in your ecosystem. And we got some hands up though, and Tyler, welcome up as well, man. But Harbinger, you haven't had a chance to really jump in yet, so please feel free to go ahead, and then we'll go to 808.
Oh yeah, hello everyone, and I really appreciate the opportunity to come up here. So thank you very much. And this is a very, very, very interesting subject, and it's funny that we were talking about it a little earlier. It's You had already planned this, and that we could just spill it over here, which is like the perfect environment. So yeah, you guys just brought up a point, like a lot of the what we consider to be AI is just generative, like text models and generative image models and stuff like that. But like to be truly AI, like I think you pointed to a fact, like it has to be quote unquote sentient. I think is that the threshold? Because I think when and another question, when you're talking about things like that, a lot of us, I'm from the '90s, so well, I was born in the '80s, but I was, growing up in the '90s. And, the Terminator movie with the Skynet program that was able to, like, overrun all of these, military weapons and gain control of them. I think that's everybody's, like, worst fear. And I think that's probably, the probability of that's probably very, very low. But do you think there is maybe a sentient technology that exists that we just don't know about? Or do you still think that that's down the road, like a top secret one that's hidden, that it's like it's a sentient AI?
Sentience is another one of those words where it's very interesting, because if you asked what is sentience to five different people, you're probably going to get five different answers, maybe somewhat similar, but different answers nonetheless. I think if you think about it from our perspective, if there were some sort of artificial super intelligence, artificial general intelligence, which I think more speaks to us personally than any sort of synthetic being, I think what if we were to get to the point where we were able to create something as in depth as a large language model, right? To think about it as like the same way our brains work, right, from a neural capacity set, that is able to be put into a robotic form that could be its own cybernetic being. The thing is that when you say sentience, it's one of these opinions now against which is like, um, to it, or to you, you believing something else has sentience is really just more of a measure of your own aptitude, in which the way that you perceive this operational actionable sense to be in relation to how it makes you feel. So it's like to a being that might be so advanced that to us we are a sense of a dust, right? We're just a particle that exists in relation to what it is perceiving. um, are we sentient? Right? I mean, you and I would say yes, but then something like that probably would say it's not even a thought, right? It's not really something that um, it delves on, because it's more of an opinionated stance. But of course, this is my own opinion, and I hope that answered that question, Harbinger, somewhat. 808 though, man, go ahead, jump right in.
I think artificial AI or intelligent. It really suggests something completely separate from natural processes, but in reality, it is created by human intelligence. seen as extension of our own capabilities. Like how you're saying, tools are extensions of our own realities, like the creation of the hammer, the creation of fire, the creation of the vata, which the vata is canoe, the creation of the way my ancestors navigated the Pacific using triangulation. Even within AI, in this discussion about being is created from human intelligence and systems that don't possess the understanding of consciousness, which is typically the definition around sentient. The capacity to feel, perceive, and experience subjectively. In philosophies and cultures, it's tied to our consciousness, emotion, and self-awareness. Within my traditions, is the concept of mana, spiritual power, porno, righteousness, and a deep understanding of interconnectedness and awareness that extends beyond more than just mere existence. While current AI limitations are presently operate based on algorithms and data processing without true understanding of awareness. Which like these things, I'm not saying who knows in 1,000 years where this will be. Who will be alive then? Who knows? I don't know. But understanding of how these processes are built and understand it at its underlying network can better our understanding how these things are applied and better protect each and every one of us or just communities or just the knowledge of ourselves to better make sure that these systems are created correctly, like with the sharing of that AI Bill of Rights that happened like 2020. I always refer to that because it's interesting when that popped out. But the concept of all this and the limitations of these things and the growth and evolution is something that we see throughout time, and tools and art, even artwork, music, showcase the realities of the life that we live in the moment that we live in. It's always interesting, you know what I mean? Good stuff.
I appreciate you very much, 808, and I couldn't agree more, man. Shellfish dropped down there. Trevor, welcome into the space, man, and you have your hand up. Well, Shellfish is having some technical difficulties right now, so we'll jump over to you, and then back over to Shellfish. But welcome up, man.
I appreciate the opportunity. Definitely an interesting conversation, guys. I mean, when we're thinking of AI, I like to not think of it as sentient, right? Because typically there's a controller. So even LLMs, large language models, they still have a controller, or a handler that kind of controls the parameters. So it's not self sufficient. Now we can teach these AI models to learn parameters, but ultimately we as humans are the controller.
100%. Yeah, and can't be overstated today, especially today, especially today, Trevor. Right, where these large language models have agendas that have been somewhat programmed into them, because of course all of us have opinions and bias, and we're not to the point and stage yet where we have a lot of these open source algorithms that are able to essentially compute together in an interoperable way where we can cancel out this known hate or bias that would be programmed into a particular application. Okay, thank you for coming up. Shellfish, though. Well, please feel free to jump in now.
Um, I kind of see it as the acceleration towards AGI starting when just the general population started interacting with the AI last year with the onset of GPT, as well as a bunch of other models. And it just not being the industry training or utilizing it, but the moms, dads, teachers, just anyone that could get their hand on it. And so that training of not just different libraries, but emotions and experiences being programmed in, being interacted with. Um, I think it was Sam that said yesterday there was like thousands of days left before ASI. And as more and more people utilize the AI platforms and feed it more data and libraries on a personal level, um, it I see it going from being external to more of an internal interface, and it's still being a tool set, but the sentience literally is like what you keep saying. It's us. It's just having access to all this information at our fingertips. And on a global scale, it's, maybe we'll still have 100 to 150 IQs or whatever anybody's sitting at, but the ability to gain access to these things may seem like we have 1,000 IQ or better. However, it's just instant access to those libraries, as well as our DNA libraries. I mean, include that. And somebody was saying, I apologize if this is the incorrect number, but for like 4,000 generations of humans, etc., that data being accessible. So the ancestral knowledge that 808 so lovely talks about in here with the Hawaiian ancestry or Polynesian ancestry, being able to access that knowledge and bringing that to the table. It's just going to be mind blowing here in the next. I don't. I think they said what, maybe 8 to 10 years, if that's the few thousand days or few thousand. Yeah, was it a few thousand days? That's so crazy. That's like mind blowing, guys.
Yeah, it is an interesting thing when you think about how we consider the measure of time. Of course, it's more relative to feeling than it is actually a measure because we try to measure light, and the measure of light is based off of an assumption rather than you know uh, a an ability to observe it from an external standpoint. Of course, we're part of the observation. We're not external to it. But uh, persistence man, welcome up. Glad to have you up here. You got your hand up, so please feel free to jump into the conversation.
Hey, Death, how you doing? Thank you very much, man. I just got a question, and it's kind of simple. So is one of the solutions to like the trust of AI is just simply just make everything open AI, right? And so that we could see the code and see the sources of everything, to make sure that there's no malicious code written in there. Is it more in depth than that?
I think it's more in depth than that, but that definitely is, in my opinion, plays a large role for the ability for the information to be able to be able to be proven that there's not malicious actors behind it. So yeah, I do think that for sure. Like even like if you think about them from what do they put on some images that you can get produced from the AI models, like a wash border where there's a way to identify where the information or source of information has come from. But
Right.
I think it also legislation I think also plays a huge role in this. And from our global perspective, it becomes very difficult because you have different beliefs all over the world, and different standards that are set. And so that I'd like to see more come to a more agreeable standard set. Maybe we'll see that, in our next 5 to 10 years of our um, effort of globalization as a species. But yeah, legislation to me is probably the biggest part of that because then you could at least have the power in law to hold those malicious actors accountable. People who aren't maybe storing information in the right ways, or they're letting certain access to certain individuals of certain information when they shouldn't be, and building profiles on other individuals for sharing it for marketing reasons for these individuals. I mean, there's a ton of things that go on with people's information, of
Right.
course, today.
And then I another kind of simple thought is like, the digital IDs will make a lot of sense, right? To help distinguish who's real and who's not. But at the same time, you want to have decentralized, internet and decentralized. So where do you sit in that? Where do you sit in the camp of like remaining autonomous, but at the same time, maybe for different actions like competing in financial markets, that's obviously not going to fly, right? Or do you think it's going to be separate, or do you think everyone should be identified for what they are in the future?
Yeah, I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with keeping your anonymity, but I think there are levels to it. And so, you know, all of us who have made an X account, right, and some level have doxed ourselves, whether our images are there or not. We use emails that are associated with us, personal phone numbers that are associated with us. All of this information truly could be used to find out who we are and where we're located, right? So I think there are definitely levels to it. Like nothing says that because you're using a DID to access even whether it be DeFi, right, decentralized finance or TradeFi or whatever applications that out there. I don't think because you are from a certain place, you should ever be denied access for something. The problem then it comes down to once again, it's a little bit of like legislation. If your country has deemed some things illegal for you to be able to access as like a website of, it's really like a gray area because as much as I agree with you from a operational sense, every person deserves to be able to have the same access to something. It's not going to change like your government from locking you up for something as well. So it's hard to kind of give like a
Yeah,
clean cut
absolutely.
answer for it.
Yep, yep. And one more quick question, if you don't mind. This kind of goes to just what Shellfish said the other day. At least what I think I heard her say. I think you said the other day that we are training the AI essentially, right, by our conversations and by our interactions and stuff like that. And I just want to see how much you could share on that. If there's anything more you could share on that, how in depth you think it goes. Yeah, thanks.
Well, of course, this is then comes down to the particular person or individuals or entity that's behind that set of applications, because you look at something like a BlackRock, right? And they have Aladdin, and so Aladdin and of course BlackRock's reach is pretty vast in the accumulation of data that they maybe have been able to pertain in a meaningful way of steering markets. So maybe they have more ability of influence over information than like someone like OpenAI does. But um, lost my train of thought there. You want to re-ask the question? Actually, I actually lost myself there. Sorry.
Do you want me to jump in for a sec?
Uh,
Yeah, go for it.
sure, free.
Okay, so where I was coming from when I said it, so every time you go into a space or you do a digital footprint, there's a trace of a little bit of you. There's DMs, there's emails, anything that makes you you is something that somebody can make a model based off of you. They could take a picture, they could do a LiDAR image of you, they can make a copy of you, a clone of you. And so someday, somebody out there, if it's not already out there, is going to go into GitHub and go, I'd like a copy of the Shellfish library. And they're going to go in and say, can I see all the GIFs or the digital images or personality? Or they're going to go in and see persistences. So you'll be able to go in and have a team of people based off of humans, and you can kind of do hybrids. Like you're like, oh, Death Ranger's really smart, Shellfish maybe not quite as up to speed. Can you put them on the team because they kind of work well together with bouncing ideas off of each other? And hey, bring in 808 because he's got some really cool perspectives too. Oh, by the way, Ben has some really cool financial data, so let's bring him
I
into
don't
the
want to be
team.
involved in that.
But your clone will be, and I
You
could
don't own
rent
your
I could
data.
That's
rent you,
bullshit. I didn't sign that. I didn't sign
Ben.
any of
That's
that.
really cool, though.
Yeah, Ben, I could rent you. I could say, hey, I
I
need
don't like this
Ben's.
at all.
Shellfish, you just raised a very very questionable moment there from an empirical data set. If you were to go into a court of law, uh, would the interpretation of Ben's personality persona be enough for him to claim some sort of copyright that you've taken his identity in some sense without his permission? Very question. We also know that thing happened
Well,
with OpenAI, and the voice, of course, the voice was a little
so we've been
messy.
discussing this in Spaces, Death Ranger, because I'm very vocal about how people are doing audio recordings of us and how they can make NFTs or different images from us. And I'm kind of bothered by it, but it has been brought to the attention that these are public forums. It would be just like going to the beach and having somebody record you. And unfortunately, I think even Scarlett Johansson goes out into the public and her voice could be taken and utilized. So I I mean, unless they can prove where they actually acquired the copy of the voice, I don't know if she really would have a leg to stand on personally, in a court of law just because of that alone.
You know what that just reminds me of? You guys remember back in the days where there'll be words and phrases recorded in like Red Dragon's voice or that guy's deep voice, and you could use it as a recording and make prank calls using them, which is hilarious. That's what that reminded me of. So it's not too far fetched that these things are already being used. You know, we have data sets and models that's been created by the demographics of people's ethnic backgrounds, the demographic of what they lived and what they went through. We have histories of studies that goes for hundreds of years of psychological effects on our minds and our brains and a lot of these things. So I would say that's far fetched to even come to a point where we have consensus models already built around some of these things, which we do. Mathematical equations, you know, all of these things are a reflection of us as humans as a whole, which is crazy.
Thank you guys. And just to comment real quick, I hope they are listening and taking data and recording
I
everything, because I
am.
think I know you are, Scannis, because I think this moment in time that we have on here with these people and is revolutionary and can really benefit humanity in the future. So thank you for the time, guys. I appreciate it.
That's exactly it, persistence. It's all in an effort to generate benefit for our species and our future. But Trevor, you got your hand up again, man. I'd love to hear your thoughts, and we'll roll back over to you after Selfish.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted to touch on what Shellfish said. So, as far as like a public forum of information, kind of like a personal GitHub where somebody could take ownership of your own data, and I think that's, I guess, the movement, especially in the blockchain, and recently, you know, within technology, is kind of stemming away from big tech so we can actually take ownership of our own data in our own metadata, so that does not happen. Whereas we've seen, for numerous years now, that big tech kind of controls our metadata. They can give it up to and use it however they want for advertisements or just create a public GitHub. So the importance of actually taking ownership of our data and being able to have license for it and say, okay, this is the metadata that I want to release and make public for anybody's use, but having that ability to actually control what is actually public.
So who's to say that you don't have somebody that calls you up, kind of like that they're doing now, and they only need a few seconds of you, like they can crank call you and grab your voice that way, and it's not consensual really because you're just answering your cell phone. So if somebody actually ended up getting your cell phone, your personal cell phone number, um, that's kind of a way around workaround, unfortunately, right?
This happened to me. What happened to my papa, my grandfather? Um, Somebody called him one day, and with my voice, apparently. I mean, I wasn't there, so I don't know, but according to him, my voice called him one day and told him that I was in a car accident. I had gotten a DUI and I had COVID for some reason, and that I was in jail and he needed $17,000. Luckily, my pop up didn't send it, but that's horrifying, right? Like, and yeah, I don't know how you stop that, but it's got to stop.
So certain actors, right, and we've seen it before, actors, actresses, prominent figures, they actually trademark their voices. So can it not be this similar or same for normal people to, if they want that sort of protection, to be able to trademark and protect themselves so that they actually have a legal stance to know go after somebody if that ever does happen in a public manner.
Right, right. I guess it's just how do you track it? How do you enforce it? Like that's probably a bot, and you know what I mean. I don't know. It's just crazy to
We
think about, but
We've already
yeah,
actually seen it happen, at least with someone who was famous. Shellfish brought her up earlier, and OpenAI with their Strawberry model, right, which had Scarlett Johansson's voice on it. It was only because he had actually told her that he was going to use her voice, and so obviously when she said no, and then it came out sounding like her, she got a little upset. But like, there's this really interesting question though, because if I were to like try to scalpel as much information to make your voice model right now, right, Trevor? It's like, would I be able to get every pitch for that you're gonna have? As you age, your body will change and your voice will be somewhat different. It's such a gray area, and it's like it's really difficult, of course, because I could just see the court hearings already being like they're experts who are like having to measure the synthesis of the symmetry of the way that like the yeah, of course they do like them by letters, right? Oh, I
Syllables.
yeah, the symbols of the yeah, I don't know how you measure the semantics of the yeah, of like your vocals. I just it's such an
Are you
interesting
talking about
thing.
like hertz?
Hey,
How they measure audio through hertz?
Yeah, the different hertz. Thank you. Yeah,
We
the
were just
semantic.
talking about this the other day, yesterday actually, how musical and how hertz and how these vibrations affect us each in on different levels, which how we measure it is changed from how it was naturally emitted, like 432 to 444. But we even within history, the different hertz from prayer to cultural songs, to songs being sung in certain areas, has given off different types of hertz, which there is, I forgot what studies it was, but it does release like serotonin and different endorphins within our body that causes us to feel this type of way. It's always interesting to see the different interconnectedness of the things that we put ourselves in every day.
Could not agree more, man. And Shellfish, please feel free to go ahead and jump in.
I wasn't sure. Did Tyler want to jump up? I thought I saw his hand up. I
Looks like Tyler has dropped down. But
Oh,
if you would like to come back up, Tyler, please feel free to. Also, we haven't heard from Scams either, so if you want to jump in as well, Scams, please feel free to.
So what I was gonna bring up is, so as we progress more and more to from external to internal, how would you start regulating the dream state? Because I don't know about you, I'm sure other people have had dreams about people, celebrities, or I mean, how do you go about? I mean, do you start charging for dreams? I mean, that's hallucinations in the human mind. Like, do you copyright to that level? Like, is it where does it start? Where does it end?
I don't think that it's going to be at least it's not the society that I would like to see us go to, where your brain waves are being managed by some sort of peripheral perimeter set, which you're allowed to have and not have. I've mentioned like a technique beforehand where you can maybe like make something like a microchip where if somebody was a sexual predator, you could try to, and of course this would be their choice to get the chip installed where you could have the inhibitation and it would in, it
But
would
you have telepathy that's already available. You have input output that can go into the brain and out of the brain. So who's to say that it wouldn't be just exactly like Total Recall where you can
I just was
orchestrate,
gonna say that movie,
right?
Shelton. That's so
yeah,
Thank
hilarious.
you.
it's horrible. It's horrible. I
Total
mean, that's
Recall.
to me that would be dystopia, right? And to I of course I think we're headed towards more of what I would think of as a utopia, but yeah, that to me is like dystopia for sure. That's it's not the society that I'd like to see promoted.
But you know what's
You say that
interesting is the brain the studies of when you're sleeping and dreaming, and then the studies of your brain activity that has been going on, like that one technology that has been getting used a lot lately, even within the gaming industry, where that one Hine created this thing to where it reads her brainwaves and she does actions within the game and she beats it. Which is wild that you could do these things with understanding your brain activity and the different chemicals and reaction that it does while you're thinking. Even when you're sleeping, your brain is always active. So it's just crazy to see it, to see some of the iterations and other projects and things being created around such things.
Why does that sound so foreign though? Because I mean, if we start going into space travel, I mean, you've seen holodecks forming. They have them already being kind of built with Disney, right? Those little pads like that you can walk on, and then you've got your VR goggles. It's a matter of time before it's an implant that just helps manifest the visuals that you. Well, not everybody is really good at visualizing or conceptualizing with their mind's eye, but someday maybe everybody can be at that level and project it over to whomever you'd like to have that image sent to. I think that was
Evolution,
one of yeah, I think that's what Kurzweil was saying. Like, if you wanted to share a memory because somebody wasn't there, that was something that could be a reality in the future.
Well, a good example is infrared. Being able to see at night. We weren't able to do that without technology being added. Right now, it is what is that? You just said that word. I can't even say that word right now. It's not internal, it's external. I mean, it's a equipment, a tool we put on ourselves. Who goes to say that we cannot have a contact lens that gives us the same exact effect? Which is crazy to even think like that. To even know that we can have something so small that we can put as a contact lens that can give us better vision and better sight, which we see evolution of how our vision can be better, even though within ourselves we have indifferences that doesn't allow us to see 2020 or doesn't allow us to, nearsighted or farsighted. Now we're even getting more in depth with studies going into anthrobots or was it xenobots, one of those bots that is getting very particular into studies and even doing stem cell research and adding it into it to where it can attack and just attack at its core, and then after it does its job and it done its job, it will just disintegrate and go forth as like a natural or like how our body does a natural disposal of dead cells like apoptosis and stuff like that. So that's what's always interesting with a lot of the technology and evolution is that we have structures where it can process a lot of this data for us more faster than we ourselves and our human brains can do. Not saying that our human brains are not able to process this data, but it's also the understanding of this data that we need to be able to understand at a more depth level to be able to apply them, which we even see the evolution of that being able to understand a lot of these things, which is amazing that we can come and do these things. Not saying that there's no nefarious ways, which history tells us it's always been there's always nefarious actions behind evolution and technology, like even with the evolution of money, which has always been used in nefarious ways and then used for good too. It's crazy, but that's a whole other topic.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. And yeah, Xenobots were like 2017, 2018, and now we're on to Anthrobots, which are just like you were speaking about from a stem cell perspective. Learning how to essentially uh, take cells from any state, from possibly anywhere in a person's body, and give them the information to essentially turn back into a stem cell or whatever particular cell they need to be introduced into an environment where they could, you know, create some sort of benefit if it's curing cancer or whatever it may be inside of the body. Yeah, and shellfish. I think to me, just the most important thing remains opt in. It's like I think capabilities and possibilities are fantastic, and we should only increase the efforts of those possibilities being something of relevance, but always opt in, never forced in that sense of reading your brainwaves, of course. Trevor, though, go ahead, jump back in, man.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys talked about some of the benefits of the internal, right? Because especially through my time of studying like criminal psychology, you kind of ask yourself, and this was a general conversation even in the classes, like how we can use this for good. Because especially in kind of like a dream state or a psychological state, the majority of those thoughts come from trauma or experiences in life. So how to use that, you know, the technological advancements to good more so than just a dystopian future. And I'm glad you mentioned it as far as like opting in. So right, so like being prepared and understanding, what you're going through and how it's going to actually help.
100%. Yeah, there's very little. It makes very little sense to go into something and put so much resources into something if we're not going to see the effort that comes out of it, the benefit that comes out of it for the entire species. And just like you said, of course, I'm not a believer in good or bad, but I think beneficial is easily able to be interpreted as loving and empathetic creations or generations of objects, which make our survival much easier and much more enjoyable, and of course in different particular settings like playing video games or sports and such. We were coming up on that 5 o'clock mark. Probably gonna keep the space going for another five minutes or so. We'll end it right around 5:10, 5:15. So if there's anybody in the audience that hasn't had a chance to come up that would like to speak on any of the topics that were spoken about so far, or has any overall thoughts on the space, please feel free to hit the request. If not, I think I'll go around the room and just get some thoughts on the conversations that we got to have today, and maybe some last minute comments from anybody. But as far as my at least my space is going right now, Ben, you are at my first location I'm looking at here, so
Wow.
I'd like to hear your thoughts on everything today.
Sure. There's an interesting case that happened in the 80s, I believe, with a man named John Fogerty. He was the lead singer of a band called the Creedence Clearwater Revival. The band, they broke up in the 70s or so. The band sued him for having a solo career and performing, and essentially for copyright, because his new songs and his voice sounded too much like the songs he wrote and the voice he used in the in the band previously. And he wound up winning that lawsuit. And I can see a world very soon where this sort of, that these, it's not going to be exactly like that, of course, but it's a very, very interesting way of how we're going to see whether it's copyright or if it's just like what is authentic and what isn't and how that gets defined. So that's my takeaway from today. Thank you, as always.
Well, thank you very much for coming up and joining the conversation today, Ben. Persistence, I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Um, just another great conversation again, man. I really appreciate these spaces because AI is something that I do not know much about, but it's something that I want to know enough about as much as I can, because I think it can be such a great utility for humanity if it is applied correctly, right? And I think with people like you, Shellfish, and everyone else who's really trying to educate people on this topic, I think that that's the best way we can go about this. You know what I mean? So thank you so much, and always a great conversation, guys.
Appreciate your kind words, Persistence, and I thank you for coming today. It was really great having you here. I like hearing your perspectives and questions on things. Um, Next on the list, though, Shellfish. Please feel free to go ahead, jump in.
Great space as always. I'm super happy that so many new speakers came up today. So it's always nice to have new thoughts and voices contributing. So I'm happy that the space is so full of new ideas. So thank you, everyone.
I'm late, but I would want to say great space, Death Ranger, sorry. But awesome space. I was in and out a little bit, but it was fantastic. I can see it from the people who are up here. So, yeah, made it to
Yeah,
the
it really
finish
was.
line.
It was a great space that I really enjoyed everyone's thoughts. Tyler, though, man, I'm glad you came back up. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the space and any last minute comments.
I was in and out, but I will say, um, I'm glad that I followed you. I don't know how I follow people all the time, and I try to keep my following list short because I like to keep it that way. And I guess I stopped following you, and I forgot how intense some of your spaces get and the topics. And so I'm glad that I was here, and I'm looking forward to more of your spaces, to be honest with you. And that's all I'll say. And the whole thing about AI, it's a very interesting subject. And I think, Death Ranger, you had a lot of interesting outlooks on it, and with the whole language of it and what it is and what what it really means and why we're going in the road that we're going with, speaking about it as if it's artificial. But it's getting people to think differently, and that's the main thing. Changing the images of man per se, and yeah, really looking forward to more of your spaces now that I'm following you again. So
Well, I appreciate the kind words, Tyler. And there's nothing wrong with trimming the hedges. And I'm glad I got to be back as part of that Merkle tree branch. And look forward to having you in these future conversations as well. 808, man. Last, but we save the best for last, man. No, I love you, though, brother, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.
You know, same here. I always love these spaces. Glad to have always been able to speak, and always thank you for letting me speak. And glad to see, like Selfish said, newer people coming up and speaking, because it's always when we come together and have individual perspectives and sharing our individual thoughts and understanding of the things that we know. We individual from ourselves grow from that, and to have to understand other people's perspectives, and even understanding that evolution ain't something to be afraid of. It's something to try to better understand and something to accept, especially with the evolution of technology, and understanding how these things are created and applied can better our understanding of how better to apply them to our own lives to better ourselves. That's what's powerful about us as humans. We are able to change even our own consensuses to better ourselves, which we have done throughout our own lives. We change ourselves to look at things differently, through our lives, through how we grew from when we were young to our mid teenage years, to our young adult life, to now. And we always will grow. We always will grow, even if we won't accept it. But it's like coming to that point of when we need to accept things for what it is and accept things for what it will not be sometimes. And understanding a lot of these things can better ourselves to be able to apply a lot of these different types of forces that comes against us. But like I always take away from these spaces is that we need, as myself, to remind myself that we will never know everything, and in order for us to grow, we need to accept that. And then we start to learn even more, which I love it. Every time I step into this space, I learn something new from either the speakers who have spoken to the ones that who are will speak in the future. It's lovely. And I always thank you. Hello, everybody.
Aloha, brother, and I thank you for coming to this space, man. This was really a fun conversation today. I appreciate all of you guys, and I hope whoever listens to this in the future, I hope you guys find it as valuable as I know I do today. But yep, love everyone. We will be back Thursday this week, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Look forward to seeing everyone there, and I'll probably keep it somewhat relative to the conversation that we had today, so we can keep going on forth in these particular topics. Maybe more towards distribution of the way that information could be done, is done, and other opinions and how people maybe would like to see it be done. So, yep, love everyone, and we'll see you guys soon. Night, everyone.